Welcome back. You're watching The Eagle, and we begin tonight with breaking developments out of Washington, where the stakes could not be higher. A major escalation warning is coming directly from the White House. President Donald Trump has issued a firm and urgent deadline to Iran, one that could determine the next phase of this conflict within hours. According to the president, Iran has until 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesday to reopen the vital global oil route, the Strait of Hormuz, to international commercial shipping. And if that does not happen, the United States, he says, is prepared to launch targeted military strikes. Those strikes, according to the president, could focus on Iran's key infrastructure, including power plants, oil terminals, and major bridges, raising immediate concerns across the international community about escalation, humanitarian impact, and the legal implications of such actions. This warning came during a lengthy press conference at the White House, where the president spoke for over an hour, laying out what he described as multiple options on the table, ranging from renewed diplomacy to full-scale military escalation. At several points, he suggested that U.S. forces have the capability to disable Iran's core infrastructure in a matter of hours, even claiming that critical systems across the country could be taken down in a single night. Yet he also emphasized that he does not want to expand the war, repeatedly stating that negotiations are still possible, even as tensions escalate. That contrast between readiness for war and preference for diplomacy is now shaping the global response, uncertainty mixed with urgency. Earlier in the day, even before the press conference, President Trump made additional remarks suggesting that Iran is currently in a weakened position. He framed the situation in economic and strategic terms, saying that the U.S. could move quickly, finish the job, and potentially secure control over regional oil resources, comments that are drawing sharp international reaction. Analysts warn that such statements could inflame tensions, not only with Iran but also among U.S. allies concerned about the broader implications of military action. The stakes here are extremely high. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most critical oil transit routes in the world. Nearly 1/5 of the global oil supply passes through this narrow waterway every day. Its closure over the past several weeks has already caused disruptions in global markets, pushing oil prices higher and creating volatility across economies worldwide. And as of now, there is no clear agreement in place to reopen it. This is not the first time a deadline like this has been issued. Past administrations have imposed ultimatums, some of which were extended or delayed. But this time, the president is insisting that the deadline is final, leaving little room for ambiguity. Analysts in Washington, however, remain cautious, noting that even with such warnings, immediate large-scale action is not guaranteed. Financial markets are watching closely. Oil prices have been fluctuating sharply with each new development, rising on fears of escalation and easing when signs of possible diplomacy appear. Today, markets showed relative stability, indicating that investors may still believe a negotiated outcome is possible, but that window is narrowing by the hour. Another major concern being raised tonight is international law. Targeting civilian infrastructure, such as bridges, power systems, and water facilities, has prompted warnings from global legal experts in the United Nations, which has stated that such attacks could potentially be considered war crimes. When asked about these concerns, the president dismissed them, saying they would not influence his decision. The White House has argued that the United States is acting in response to ongoing threats from Iran, including missile activity, regional destabilization, and attacks on commercial shipping. Still, the situation on the ground remains extremely complex. Military analysts caution that any large-scale strike would not end the conflict. Airstrikes on infrastructure could trigger retaliatory attacks, escalation into neighboring regions, and potentially a wider military engagement beyond the initial strikes. Humanitarian concerns are also significant. Damage to essential systems such as electricity, water supply, and transportation could impact millions of civilians, potentially triggering a wider crisis inside Iran. Reports suggest that several major cities could experience prolonged power outages if critical infrastructure is targeted, affecting hospitals, schools, and basic services. At the same time, the economic impact is already being felt globally. Rising oil prices are impacting fuel costs, transportation, and basic goods. In the United States, these pressures are becoming politically sensitive, particularly with elections approaching, as voters increasingly focus on economic stability and energy security. Despite escalating rhetoric, indications are that diplomacy has not completely collapsed. In recent days, U.S. officials and allies have reportedly proposed a temporary ceasefire plan, a 45-day pause in hostilities, coupled with steps to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has rejected this proposal, instead calling for a more comprehensive agreement that ensures a longer-term resolution. Sources indicate that Iran has submitted its own multi-point plan, though the details remain limited. What is clear is that communication between both sides is ongoing, even as public statements grow more intense. This makes the situation highly unpredictable. While the president continues to emphasize strength and readiness, he has also repeatedly stated a preference for a deal that avoids further destruction and brings the conflict to a close. International reaction has been swift. European allies have called for calm, urging both sides to avoid escalation, and the United Nations has convened emergency meetings to discuss potential humanitarian responses should military action occur. Neighboring countries, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, are closely monitoring the situation given the proximity to the Strait of Hormuz and the potential impact on shipping lanes and regional security. Even within the U.S., political leaders are divided. Some lawmakers have expressed support for decisive action to ensure the free flow of commerce, while others are urging caution, warning that a strike could spiral out of control and lead to a broader Middle East conflict. Intelligence briefings suggest that U.S. forces are on heightened alert, with carrier groups and air assets positioned strategically in the region. Meanwhile, Iranian leadership has maintained a defiant posture. State media and official statements indicate that Iran will not bow to pressure and that it is prepared to defend its sovereignty. Experts warn that even a limited strike could provoke a series of retaliatory measures, including attacks on commercial vessels, regional military targets, and even U.S. installations in the Gulf. The humanitarian impact of potential conflict cannot be overstated. Hospitals, food supplies, and critical services could face immediate disruption, while civilian populations might be caught in the crossfire. International relief organizations are already assessing contingency plans in the event of escalation. Energy markets are particularly sensitive. Any prolonged closure of the Strait of Hormuz would likely trigger historic spikes in oil prices, affecting economies worldwide, from Europe and Asia to the Americas. Analysts predict that even a short-term disruption could push crude prices past $150 per barrel, exacerbating inflation and straining global supply chains. And while military readiness dominates headlines, the cyber dimension of this conflict is also a growing concern. U.S. officials have warned that Iran may retaliate with cyber operations, targeting infrastructure, banking systems, and critical government networks, adding another layer of complexity to an already volatile situation. So now, all eyes are on that 8 p.m. deadline. Will Iran make a last-minute move? Will the United States delay action if progress is made? Or are we heading toward a major escalation that could have consequences felt around the globe? As the hours tick down, analysts stress that uncertainty remains the defining factor. A misstep, miscommunication, or miscalculation could trigger rapid escalation, while diplomatic efforts, if pursued, could still avert a direct confrontation. At this hour, there is no final answer. What is certain, however, is that the next 24 hours are expected to be critical, not just for Washington and Tehran, but for global markets, energy security, and regional stability. You're watching The Eagle. Stay with us for continuing coverage as we bring you live updates from the White House, regional developments, and expert analysis on what could become one of the most consequential events in recent U.S.-Middle East relations. In the coming hours, we will track developments at the Strait of Hormuz, including shipping activity and any signs of reopening. Statements from international leaders, including calls from Europe, the United Nations, and regional powers. Market reactions as oil prices and global financial indicators respond to the unfolding events. Military positioning, including U.S. assets in the Gulf and Iran's potential defensive measures. Humanitarian and civilian impact, with updates on relief measures and potential escalation risks. From Washington to Tehran, the situation remains fluid, and as the world watches, the message from the White House is clear. Time is running out, and action or inaction will have consequences. Stay tuned. We will continue to bring you live, comprehensive updates, expert analysis, and global reaction on the Eagle, your source for the latest breaking news.